I want every podcast guest to sit in a chair like this, knee up. Like, I'm gonna have to find a way to make this possible in the van. I'm gonna lay in the bed when I interview people from now on, and this table that you're on converts it to a couch, and I'll just have that person lay there.
Of course. Yeah.
You look comfortable.
Because I'm trying to be. I'm faking it till I make it. Like I said, I'm at a neighbor's house who was gracious enough to let me use their house. And I found the room that was sort of the furthest away from the noise. And it happens to be this, she's got a great eye for design and style. And this is her husband's office, and it's pretty tricked out and pretty gorgeous. And we're on the third floor looking out of this kind of turret. So I've got these sort of surround windows, but it's very calming. And what's interesting is because we live next door on the first floor, I'm sort of looking at almost the same view that I see every day, but it's different because I'm 2 stories up and I'm like, never noticed this there. Never, this slight shift in geography, and suddenly my neighborhood looks like a different place.
Oh yeah, that's wild. Yeah, seeing it from a different vantage point. Also, I feel like this already speaks to one of the things I appreciate about you so much is that you and Paul are so connected. Your husband Paul are connected so much to your neighborhood, and the way you guys have fostered this little micro community around you in Chicago is the fucking coolest. And my husband, Matt, and I came over and we had dinner on your porch this summer. And, people are coming by, dropping off packages. And, his husband's playing music with his window open from the piano. And people are like, hey, how's it going? They have this, community garden out there. And, yeah, you guys have something really special over there.
Yeah, thank you. We feel really fortunate. In fact, if I remember that night, it was COVID, dinner on the porch, right? Which is weird. I've known you for a few years now, and Paul and I have known you and Matt for maybe a year, and you've never set foot in our home, nor have we set foot in your home because our friendship has evolved during COVID.
Yeah.
Isn't that strange?
It's great.
Yeah, I mean, yes. But just the part about oh my God, you've never set foot in my home. That night, I remember Matt brought his cello, and Paul, of course, the piano's inside, but he had it near the windows. He did that a lot this summer so that people could sit on the porch. We could have safe distance, in fact, even windows, and he would play. Matt, if I remember correctly, Matt brought his cello, and one of the people who stopped by, remember there was just a lady standing at the end of the sidewalk just listening and clapping?
Yes.
And, I joke sometimes, I probably said this to you, that part of why I married Paul was because of the village that he had here on Ravenswood. It was part of his dowry or something. But case in point, I'm sitting in my neighbor's house.
I know, exactly.
They're in Massachusetts. We look after the house when they're gone. She's like, of course, use the house. In fact, just before you and I started the Zoom, there's that daycare in the building where I work at the end of the street.
Yeah.
And so
Andrew lives within walking distance from his house, which is great too.
I do.
I'm sorry, from his work rather.
Yeah, my house is the next building to my right from where I am here, and my studio is there's 2 homes, a condo building, and then work. It's 500 feet. And in the building where my studio is, there's a daycare, which I love. Paul and I love kids. So 3 or 4 times a day, they go walking by. Paul calls it the chain gang, where all the kids are holding on to the little handles. And they often stop at the house, and Paul plays for them. A couple of years ago, the teachers asked us, they brought the kids in, and we gave them a little garden tour, and they got to see, worms and composting. So just before you called, I could hear one of the kids kind of crying. I looked down, and they're all walking down the street. So I pop open the window, and I'm like, hey, everybody. And for toddlers, in their mind, I'm always there, so they were very confused by. But yeah, the tight knit. This block and some neighbors on the next block and around the corner, man, everyone looks out for each other. Everyone looks after each other's kids. If someone's out of town, it's feed the cat or water the plants or whatever. It's a very it creates a great deal of this, for me, a great sense of safety and security in the world. It's been a scary year.
Yeah.
And to feel really known and connected to all the people in my physical proximity is, that's been a real gift.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting, like, in part seeing you and Paul, like, have this kind of, like, community around you, too. Like, I've been a lot more reflective of, like, I've always kind of felt like I've wanted that, and I felt, well, I live in Chicago, like, my neighbors are too temporal, people rent above you, and I feel like I make a lot of excuses to not do that, and it's like, I can be nice to these people and foster a relationship for a year. They don't have to be around
Yeah. Yeah.
long term. And I've also felt that way too with, like, I've kind of, like, done some introspection this year about I've always felt like I've had more limited bandwidth than I probably thought I've had for friendships. I've always been so protective of my time that, like, I'm like, I don't have time to build more relationships, or, like, it's been an odd thing that I've started to come to realize that, like, no, I've got time to meet new people and have new friends. I'm not that busy. I grew up being kind of very protective of my time. And I think I also, like, partly I would say this, growing up in the closet too, I think I had been a little bit more protected about how open I want to be with people. And I think at a certain point in my life too, because I felt dishonest about who I was, I made an effort to spend less time with people because I felt guilty about presenting, like, a version of me that was a lie to them. And now being out of the closet for a number of years, I've, like, I still have to kind of, like, shift this boat of, like, you have nothing to hide. Be open with people. Spend more time with people.
Yeah, what you're saying makes total sense. And I've had this conversation quite recently. I can't remember with who, that, so I'm 52. I came out when I was, let's say, 35-ish. And, I almost can't remember sort of living life the way that I used to, but once in a while, I'll catch myself feeling a little facetious or a little, I don't know if dishonest is maybe too strong a word, but feeling like I'm not being true to myself or true to how I'm feeling with people in the moment. And then I have to realize I practiced that skill for 35 years.
Yeah.
We all did. And you, like, to your point, you can come out of the closet, but it doesn't mean that habit or skill suddenly just goes away.
Right. Yeah, that, like, oh my gosh. Like, playing, almost, we all play a character, I guess, all the time in some ways, but, like, playing a character that you don't want to be.
Yeah. And a character that isn't who you are. It's funny, I haven't thought about this, Johnny, until you mentioned it, but I would say, well, since the pandemic, like a lot of people, I've had more time on my hands. And sometimes I spend more time on social media than I want to, but I've been purposeful, specifically on Facebook, about connecting with people from my hometown.
Okay.
And where I grew up, my graduating high school class was, like, I don't know, 130 kids or something like that. And I don't remember the number, but, like, half of us had been classmates since kindergarten, and a few of us since preschool.
That's insane.
So for me, these are, like, even if I haven't seen them in 20 years, it's like when you've known someone from the time you were 5 until you're 18, even if it's casual, like, you know them.
Yeah.
And to this topic about, I'm putting a label on it, but just, like, being your authentic self, not hiding from your sexuality or whatever. Every single person I've connected with is like, oh my God, it's so great to see you, and your husband seems great. I have not experienced an ounce of homophobia.
Yeah.
For anyone I grew up with. And in particular, especially, I feel like a lot of the women who I've known since I was a child, they're just super affirming. And Paul, even if it's someone who lives out of state and we don't see each other in person, they see little bits of Paul at the piano and they're like, oh, I'm really happy for you. And I actually had a direct message thread with a woman who I've known, again, since high school and longer, just about being gay in high school. And she was like, yeah, I wasn't sure. And I kind of wondered. But my point is, like, it's amazing how much energy, and I was a kid in the 70s and a teenager in the 80s in a small-ish town. Times are radically different now. And, kids are out at 14 and have boyfriends at 16 and a gay straight alliance in high school. Those things weren't even in our imaginations. And it's been very, it's been a really interesting learn to realize that part of my brain, the programming, like you and I were talking about, is to be kind of cautious or careful with people. But for me, 9 times out of 10, the fear or the rejection or the homophobia that I'm afraid of is out there. It's not out there.
Yeah.
Which means it's here.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Oh, that's a weird way to put it. That like the homophobia is more like potentially a narrative in your voice or inside you than outside of you. That's something that like I think has been on our radar traveling south as we're in Florida and like we spent time in Texas escaping the Chicago cold. Is that I have felt less comfortable, like, you know, with little PDA, holding hands, whatever. And it's hard to know what's self-imposed. The majority of it's self-imposed, right? No matter how people are responding. But of course you want to be cautious because there is some semblance of a level of like the risk of a threat or violence or, you know what I mean? Or an uncomfortable social situation that can potentially loom. But it's hard to know how to, you know, relax a little bit. Being here in Florida and in the South, as opposed to Chicago. Like, we take it for granted that, like, in Chicago, Matt and I, like, it is almost never on our radar to, like, need to be cognizant of, like, being affectionate towards each other or letting people know that we're a couple, even.
Yeah. It's funny when you talk about the South, every once in a while lately, because our country's, you know, I feel like we're all paying attention to, you know, to prejudices, whether racial or you know, gender or orientation or whatever. And I'm trying really hard to not go, oh, people from the South are conservative / backward. Like, we've got bigotry and homophobia up here, and they've got progressive, sex positive, of course. But the history's there, and it's funny because you mentioned that. My husband Paul grew up in Savannah, Georgia, and 4 years ago-ish, might have been 5, we road tripped through the South to Florida to meet his mother. I was meeting her for the first time. And there were a couple of like towns or neighborhoods we pull over for a bite to eat where I was like, I'm not holding my husband's hand here. And I remember it's the funniest little thing, but we would, you know, when you're on the road, you stop at a cafe for bacon and eggs or whatever. Almost every time the two of us ate out together, the server would say, do you want separate checks or combined?
Yeah.
Like, it was sort of assumed we wouldn't be together because we're men. Whereas up here, even if we're not necessarily demonstrative or holding hands or, you know, a peck on the lips across the table or whatever, there's sort of an assumption that if these men are out to dinner together, they're together. It's just a different mindset.
Yeah. You know, it's also interesting, too, because, like, going back to what you said about, like, having, like, the homophobia be in your own head, it's interesting because I remember even thinking before I came out of the closet of, like, hey, you know what? I want you to remember that you get weird vibes from people all the time because people are weird. Or because you choose to, like, psychoanalyze people for, like, that don't need it to be psychoanalyzed by you as they pass by. And remember that after you're out of the closet or, like, with your husband, that these moments don't amount to necessarily someone being homophobic or uncomfortable with you.
Yeah.
Because there's
an expression.
Yeah, go ahead.
As I say, there's an expression that I've heard, which is, what other people think of you is none of your business.
Yeah.
Yeah, internalized homophobia, that's a real thing, man. It's a real thing. It's how can you avoid it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's something that we can progressively dispel and let go of and, you know, and become stronger and healthier and more self-accepting and whatever. But, you know, there's a certain degree of imprinting there that I don't know if it's ever going to go away.
You know, and it's interesting, too, because, like, I mean, personally, I saw an arc in me growing up where, like, especially growing up very religious, that, like, for the longest time, it was, like self-loathing, like, oh, like, it's not okay to be gay, I don't feel good being gay, like, slowly transitioning, like, no clear definitive moment to, like, oh, this is fine, I'm fine with other people, I'm just not comfortable coming out. And then, like, transitioning to, like, I'm getting comfortable with myself and coming out. And so it's, evolved so slowly for me personally. Like I came out at like to everybody around 29, and like that evolution. I guess that evolution is kind of always taking place, right? Like getting comfortable with yourself.
Yeah. There's the Metro.
Heyo.
It's so interesting, but at this height, it's almost like I could see right into the passenger cars. Because from our house, we're a little bit lower.
You guys jump on that Metro? You're waving at them.
Yeah. Well, everyone's like, I love the train. It's part of, Paul calls it like the tapestry of the neighborhood. And it's not super loud. And it's Metro, so it's not super frequent.
Yeah.
But like every once in a while, we get annoyed with it. Like Paul's trying to do a recording and the train goes, or I'm trying to do a call. And it's warm weather and the windows are open. But the best way to gain appreciation for the train is to watch the kids at the preschool. They have a little playground, and the train, they hear it, and they all screech and go running to the gate. And they're like, the train, oh, the train. And then I'm like, oh, trains are fun.
Yeah. Why can't we live life like that more?
It's good to have, that's why, for me, why it's good to have kids around. Our nephew, who's now 7, when he was little at the house, 2, 3, probably almost 4 years old, if we were anywhere in the house and he heard the train, he would run to the front of the house to watch it go by. And sometimes in the yard we'd wave, and every once in a while the conductor would wave back and honk the horn. And yeah, the kids have that really refreshing appreciation for things. It's good. It's good to be around.
Yeah. I was just I'm reading The Happiness Project by Gretchen. Oh, I can't remember her last name. And she's talking right now. There's a chapter in her book about like having children and the type of joy you get from children. And it's not always in the moment joy. And sometimes it's like the benefit of having children and seeing things again through their eyes and like having to get to relive those experiences. And I'm like, yeah, that is entirely true. Like when I'm around my nieces, like that's so contagious. Watching them like do all their first again, or like you help out at your nephew's school. Like I've gone and taught in some schools for Second City over the years, and like walking back into an elementary school and seeing it, like it doesn't matter what elementary school it is, they all smell and look the same.
They totally do.
Like they've got like the pictures on the walls of like paper mache stuff, and like everyone did like 30 versions of a turkey.
Yeah.
Or like. And it all has the same smell, and it's just like you immediately are like, oh yeah, I grew up in this space for what was my entire life until I was 17 and like or 18,
Yeah, Champs, he's in 2nd grade now, of course, with COVID. He's a CPS kid, so he last spring started learning remotely in this whole school year, which is just so freaking hard and challenging, man. I mean, this, it's to state the obvious, this pandemic has just been, it's hard for everyone. And like, first of all, oh my God, 500,000 people in our country have died. And then, oh my God, how many more have been seriously ill and are dealing with, and then you look at unemployment and, but for parents, I mean, Paul and I don't have a kid in our home. We're not Champ's in and out of our house, but we're not raising a kid right now. Neither are you guys. But like, I really hurt for my friends, First of all, our nephew Champ is an only child. So when you're living at home and you're doing your school remotely, he has zero interaction with other children. That's not healthy for kids at this age.
No.
And then we have friends, one family in particular, that live in South Evanston. They have 4 children. The oldest is a high school freshman. Then you've got, I don't think Gabe is in junior high. So you probably got 2 in grade school, and then one who's like 4 years old and still at home. And then you have parents. This is true of my niece and her husband too. Parents working from home. In my niece's case, she got her working full-time from home. Her husband works, he does lawnscaping, so he's out of the house all the time. You can't throw your 3rd grader and your kindergartner in front of a computer and walk away for 8 hours. So my sister, in that case, the grandparents, the grandmother comes to my nieces and helps take care of the kids. And then like our friends with the 4 kids, they're both self-employed. So it's not like, I mean, I can only imagine that teachers and parents and kids are going to be so freaking happy next fall when they can not be cooped up in their homes. And Can you imagine that as a parent trying to like take care of your job while monitoring your child
No, I
who's
can't.
being schooled electronically?
No, like this pandemic is not everyone's getting the same experience. Some people are getting it a hell of a lot harder. And like Matt and I we know how much it affects us and like how much I'll feel off and I'll be like, man, my brain feels different. Oh yeah, because there's a pandemic. Oh, that's right. And I haven't had like hardly any like friendships that are like in person through this whole year. I didn't get to perform at all. I didn't get to go into work. But like Matt and I are in a van in Florida, swimming in the ocean,
Right.
and like patios are
You gotta
open,
go.
and like it's tough for us. Like I can't imagine living in like so many different situations. I would say we have it easier than so many people, and it feels hard.
I think it's really, in my opinion, it's really good and really healthy that you can acknowledge both. Like, I try to remind myself consistently that most of my trials and frustrations are very first world. I also try to remind myself that I'm a white cisgendered male. Like, every day is easier for me than it is for people of color or for women, you know, without me even knowing it. There are just certain things that are easy for me. And Paul and I, you know, here's the thing. I'm in the live events industry, and Paul's a musician. We make our living by large groups of people coming together.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Yeah.
That hasn't been happening for a year.
Yeah.
And so we've struggled, you know, each of us has vacillated between unemployed to underemployed. I feel really, really grateful to your point about certainly people have it harder. We've had enough work to cover the basic bills. Some unemployment has helped. Some PPP money has helped. I mean, we're not like, you know, it's not like, oh, we're making all kinds of money. Who wants work? Like, we're okay. We're getting by, which feels honestly like an accomplishment.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, think about people. Yeah, it's just, it feels healthy for me to at times give myself permission to feel sad or to feel angry or just to be frustrated that things aren't, you know, like I want to see my family more. I want to see my friends. I want to hang out with you and, you know, not be on a Zoom or whatever.
Yeah.
But then I got to remember, like, okay, everyone in my household and we share our quarantine with my sister and her husband. And then the other households in my immediate family, my mom and dad, my sister and her family, my niece and her family. I know of COVID losses that are sort of once removed for me. And I feel like that's a gift and a miracle. You know, my parents are in their mid 80s, early 80s. And today's Thursday.
Yep.
Yeah. So yesterday marked 2 weeks after their second shot. My parents are fully inoculated.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's
the number one worry for me for 11 months has been keeping my parents alive. And they've made really good choices. And my sister and niece who live near them have made deliveries and enabled them to, you know, to quarantine. But, you know, and my mom, you know, she's in her early 80s, but she's internet savvy. And she's like, when do we know about getting our vaccines? And I said, you need to look on your state, you know, go to your state in Indiana, the health website and whatever. She spent 2 or 3 hours getting her and dad signed up to get their first shots, and they got them done. I am both proud of them. I'm grateful. And also, again, not everyone has those kind of resources and has access like that.
Yeah.
This is, you know, I feel I'm trying to be aware of privilege.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't want to be a Karen. I want to be like, my life is hard because I can't go to jazzercise, you know, or whatever.
But come on, jazzercise is a big part of your life, Andrew, and it's no small thing.
It's always been an important part of my life.
I have to tell you this. So, like, you know, it's very funny how, like, I guess, like, if you give your brain, like, I don't know, time to, like, be out of its regular rigmarole, like, how it starts thinking, and, like, well, I guess probably, like, not being around people and all that sort of stuff. It's been very fascinating, like, what my brain has started thinking of and, like, thinking of the past more. And bizarrely enough, this past month, feeling like I missed going to church. Like, the idea of, like...
Interesting.
and to me, it's like, and it's very funny because it's not from like a so much a religious point of view, but like I was like, reflecting a lot on the past and remembering like the feeling of like you go to a big group, a place where you have a bunch of friends, and like you sing songs and you try to work on yourself and improve yourself. It's like, yeah.
And there's usually food involved.
There's food involved.
Even if it's just cookies and coffee.
There's shenanigans involved,
or the classic church potluck. Who doesn't love a good church potluck?
Yeah. Yeah, which is funny because I haven't felt that way in like years. And I'm just like, oh no, I lost you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Yeah, so sorry about that. The Wi-Fi went out. So basically, I'll give you a little tour here. This is like the bed right here, the fridge,
I see the fridge
sink.
underneath.
Yeah, there's a fridge there. The sink.
Wait, you don't have plumbing. You don't have actual plumbing, do you?
Oh yeah, you better believe it, baby. It's actually just it's like a foot pump down here.
Watch out. Dude, you're so manly building all this shit.
I know, bro. I'm so manly. Cameras, and this is the cab.
Oh, I see. Okay. So what I was saying with behind the bed is actually the back door. Oh, okay. Now this is hilarious because, I made the joke about the creepy guy in the van earlier, but now that I see the van and you're all headset, you know what you look like?
FBI.
You look like a surveillance crew.
Yeah.
Right? You're wiretapping the house with the FBI and,
Yeah.
Go. Open the window, everyone, right? The door and everyone jumps out.
That's exactly... We've had to be a little bit careful about where we park at night, and like, you definitely don't want to park in front of people's homes for that very reason. For them like being like, what the heck's going on in that van, and trying to like keep it on the down low, like even like our voices at night too, and like I have a little projector. Here, I'll show you. Watch out, a little projector right there, and this whole door becomes the screen for movie nights. And so like we'll plug in our headphones and listen to the movie so that we don't like alert people that we're in this vehicle.
Do I see ventilation above and behind you there?
Exactly. So here we've got a little fan, little van tour here. We got a fan going, and then here there's a skylight that like it pops open. So I guess it's technically like a moon roof. Is that what they're called? And it's got a blackout screen and a bug screen.
It's interesting. Right before your internet flipped there for a second, you were talking about the experience of wanting things from the past, and you were talking specifically about church.
Yeah.
So I grew up, my mom raised us Catholic, but then in my teens I was very into sort of a more evangelical Christian kind of church life and stuff. And neither of those are really a part of my life now. But lately I found myself humming or singing certain hymns or songs. The content of them I don't even necessarily believe in or agree with anymore. But there's a comfort that comes with the familiarity of the music.
Yeah. My brother and his boyfriend, we got a bunch of gays in my family. Which is needed, Andrew, that support, because like my family is very, conservative, evangelical. And so fill in the dots. It's exactly what you think. But his boyfriend is like a fantastic musician too, and like they don't go to church, but like they'll sit and just like he'll just like play like classic, I don't know if you know, like Jars of Clay and like stuff like that, to like hymns and like was I guess like DC Talk stuff. It's so fun like being around them, because I'm like, yes, like when he plays those songs, even though like maybe the words I don't agree with or connect to, but just like that familiarity of like I know more like pop Christian music than I know like regular secular music, just because of the way I grew up. Yeah. There's like a huge hole in my like knowledge for like music because of like what I grew up listening to.
Yeah, Paul's Aunt Louise, who is actually the twin sister of his late father, so his dad's twin sister. Paul hadn't seen her in a while. It was maybe 3-4 years ago. Her kids, grown kids, were relocated to the suburbs here for like a year or two on a gig. So Paul got to reconnect with her. We got to see her. We're hoping to see her actually next month. But she remembered that Paul had lost a treasured hymn book that he grew up with, and also as a musician, he did a lot of church organ, piano, and stuff. And she found in her own possessions that same hymnal. It was like a different color cover, whatever. Anyway, and recently sent it to Paul, which was really thoughtful and loving. And he pulled it out and he was playing, and I know some of the hymns were singing along. And yeah, it's fascinating to me that part of Paul has pointed this out, especially like high church liturgy, like Catholic churches or Episcopalian churches where there's, ritual and tradition, and, the priest is in a certain robe and the bells ring. And I'm like, this is theater. This is theater.
Yeah. It is.
Like there's cues, and there's call and response, and there's a script to follow, and there's, Paul calls it opera, especially every once in a while when you see, like, I don't know, like the Pope's the Vatican, and there's like 9, the cardinals in the red cape, and I'm like, this is an opera. This looks like a damn opera, and all the ornate stuff, and even the incense. Like, yeah, this is really interesting theater. And I don't in any way want to discredit the spirituality or the religious significance that it holds for people. I'm not saying it's just, but
it's both of those things at the same time, right?
Yeah.
It's also funny too. It's like, I always feel like, no kidding, like we need to like get together with people and sing and like believe in something collectively, and like because it's a feature of being a human. Just like every time I go to a wedding, I never dance. Like I never go out dancing, and I dance at a wedding, and I'm like, oh, this is so fun. Yeah, because it's a feature of being a human, and it's been around forever.
I was talking to someone recently, it might have been Paul, about like, where are other places in contemporary culture that you gather together and you sing? And the only thing I could come up with is sporting games where you sing the national anthem.
Yeah.
Maybe you sing your school's fight song.
Yeah.
But that's organized around the sport, right? Like that's sort of the reason, the thing to believe in is your team or the sport or, whatever. I miss that. This is really my mother, often when she's in Chicago, she'll, especially if it's around a holiday, she'll want to go to mass. And so I'll find, a church nearby. And kind of, I think maybe she even kind of initiated this idea, but we'll try different churches. Like, why not? And the architecture is cool in the city. A lot of them are old cathedrals. And I love going to mass with my mom, and it just feels good to participate with her in that way. And I don't know, maybe in my mind she just liked that I came because she wanted company, but she told me, this is maybe 2 years ago, we'd gone to mass somewhere, and she told me that the reason she likes me to go to mass with her is because she likes to hear me sing. Isn't that the sweetest thing?
Super sweet.
Yeah, and so I was with my parents. By the way, I can't remember if I said this in this conversation. Yeah, I did. But my parents are fully vaccinated.
Yes.
And we happened to be down there last week, and they were about 5 days shy of the complete period, so we wore masks.
Yeah.
But we went in the house, which we had not done in a year. We would only visit with them on the porch. And I found myself at times singing. Maybe it was just or just relaxed or whatever. And it didn't occur to me I should ask her. I was like, I wonder if Mom just likes hearing me sing, period. Like, maybe not just at mass. When they're at our house, of course, they get treated to the piano. Paul's, we have a baby grand in the living room. And, Paul's at the piano a lot of the time. And my parents, my dad especially, just love that. But I know I'm rambling on. You started with like church and music and that sort of communal thing. From what I read, a lot of the stuff that I've been reading in COVID, first of all, I track a lot of the science and what's going on with, positivity rates and vaccines. I'm fascinated with that. But I've also been reading a lot about what's happening culturally and socially and how's this affecting children and stuff. And I can't tell you how many people who are not even in my industry or Paul's who are, they're like, oh my God, I miss live music. Or, oh my God, I miss just gathering with people and listening to something or seeing something. We watched a comedy the other night at home. It was a movie. And it was funny and it was cute. And, we were having a good time. But I realized, have you ever been to a movie theater to see a comedy and there's only a few people in the audience?
Pokemon was like one other person. I took my brother to see Pokemon. No, I think it was just Pokemon was a small attended.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is what I became aware of is when audience, and this is true with improv, with theater, with anything, audiences are not just responding to the stage, but they're also responding to each other.
Yes. I saw, what is it called? Napoleon Dynamite with like a couple other people in the audience. Yeah.
And it's a little flat, right?
It was a little more awkward when I would lose my shit laughing. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. But if you're in a packed theater with 100 people and everyone belly laughs at the same time, it elevates the whole experience. So we were watching this movie and I was like, listen, again, privilege. I have the internet. I have a device on which I can watch Netflix. Yeah. Like this is not suffering, but I was like, God, I want to go. It was there were times when we were just laughing and I was aware of the difference between two guys sitting alone in bed laughing versus 100 people in the theater laughing. And I missed that. I talk about the metro train going by, and there's a station, there's a stop right at the end of our block, right? The train makes like 3 stops in the city and then goes to the North Shore suburbs. Well, when that train lets off, however many times a day, but especially, let's say, half a dozen times during evening rush hour, we have all these people walking by. Haven't seen those people in a year. And at times, like, the quiet is nice, but I'm like, I kind of miss all that, like, bustle and just the sense of life happening and people being about the business of doing things.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. And, maybe as you know, there's no COVID in Florida, so, like, we are seeing a little bit more of that bustle here. Which has been kind of odd. It's like, Matt and I haven't gone and like ate in a restaurant, but we'll go sit on the porches or like the outside seating, or whatever. But like just like walking by some restaurants and stuff that are packed, and it's like, well, I guess life is pretty normal here.
Yeah, and we've seen the numbers in Florida; they haven't been good.
No kidding. Yeah, Matt and I have like. Well, I mean, we're like very much like whenever we're in a situation, we have our mask on and like we're sanitizing like crazy. But we're like, man, if we get through Florida and don't get COVID, we're getting pretty lucky.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I was. You were talking about comedy and like people, like not very many people laughing. Well, of course, I've done like a million shows to like 3 or 4 people, and. Somebody posted a video yesterday on their Instagram feed of someone doing some like solo like comedy stuff, and you could tell it was like 2 or 3 other people in the audience. And I heard this laugh that I hadn't heard in over a year, and I used to hear it for like 10 years straight. And it's a loud, supportive laugh. To kind of tell that person that like there's somebody else here. It's a laugh that's coming from a comedian usually, and it's a laugh that also might be like letting that person know that I get the joke, like I'm in on the joke, but it's not an authentic laugh. That's the one thing it isn't. But there's so many laughs like that in the comedy world because shows will be lightly attended. They'll be attended by other comedians. They'll be attended by the friends of comedians, or they'll be attended by people who want to let you know that they get the joke or get the comedy. But it's not an authentic laugh. I was like, I haven't heard that laugh in over a year.
Right. And right now I would take 20 inauthentic laughs just to hear.
Yes.
This is interesting. Yes. You said something. I lost my train of thought. I just had this conversation this week with clients. So this is the way I describe the 3 phases of the live events industry in COVID, and we're kind of entering phase 4. Phase 1, shut everything down, cancel everything.
Yeah.
And of course, at the time, I remember early on, I was like, I don't know, it seems kind of like overly cautious, or like, oh, that's just the company hosting the event doesn't want the liability. And of course, later I was like, oh my God, what ignorant assumptions on my part. And now we know, like, oh my God, if we had started canceling shit a month before, like it could have been a whole different story. But phase 1, cancel everything. Phase 2 for my industry was like Zoom, maybe a little web environment, like, do the virtual whatever, thinking at the time, like maybe we'll be done with this in 6 or 9 months. And then phase 3 was, oh shit, we're going to be in this for a long time. And a lot of my clients and a lot of my agency partners started building these sort of robust 3D platforms, environments of like, oh, I'm actually at the theater and I move my, this whole sort of immersive thing. And I love it. I'm enjoying the work. I'm grateful for the work. But this is a thing, and I told clients this recently. Sometimes clients, they'll be debating if they want like their keynote speaker to be live or pre-produced. Or I was in California in November. It was the only time I've traveled since February of the previous year. And we were in a television studio. So it was very COVID safe. Everyone got tested before we went, temperature checks every day, tests during the gig, masks, distancing, all that. The only time someone took off a mask was if a presenter was actually on set, and we would clear the set and they'd take off their mask and do their presentation. It's hard as a presenter, as a singer, as an actor, as a speaker, to try to give energy to a virtual audience, whether they're live or recorded, when the space that you're in is not giving anything back to you.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, we didn't, you could hire bring in a small audience and spread them out, to give a little whatever. But like, I don't know if you noticed this, Johnny, but some of the best, Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon.
It feels awful. It feels awful, doesn't it, when you watch them?
And you know how hard that is for them.
Yeah.
Right? And all they get back is deafening silence. And I give them a lot of credit, but the best of everything out there, I keep thinking about the Emmys last year, the Super Bowl. There was some really great work and a lot of great problem solving and whatever. It's not as good as it was because it can't be. You can't. Every once in a while, I feel like I have to tell clients, they're like, we need to replicate this and replicate that and give the feeling of it. I'm like, we're going to do that to a degree, but don't kid. There's the train again. Going in the other direction. Hello, North Shore people. The idea of replicating human interaction, it doesn't happen. It doesn't exist.
Yeah. I was having my little like temper tantrum about online stuff the other day, talking to Matt, because like I obviously like it's better than nothing, and there's times I walk away from like teaching an online class and I feel so good and like so fueled. But then there's also like, as much as you want to pretend the glass is half full, like you have those moments you're like, oh, this is fucking half empty and it sucks. I was just having a temper tantrum about like, I hate it when people talk about like, ooh, we're exploring the future of how we could do new fun things online. And we're listening to NPR, and it was like talking about a gay bar having like a dance scene and like whatever online. And like, yeah, that's cool. But sometimes I'm in the mode of like, no, it's not cool. It fucking sucks.
I want to be dancing. I want to be sweating. I want to be listening to the music. I want spilled drinks on the floor.
Yeah. I know it's better than nothing, but it sucks. Okay, it's better than nothing.
Well, like think about when Matt and Paul were playing, when they were duetting on opposite sides of the window and the wall, and that was like really,
which was super cool. And I'll have to post that on YouTube and like tag this in the video so people can check that out, because that was really cool.
Yeah, and he's done that with other. This is before winter set in, of course, but with other musicians, and it is lovely, and it is. But there's also that longing of like, ooh, it still feels like a substitute. I have to say, to your point earlier about different people having different experiences, my husband is a collaborative artist, a collaborative musician. Yeah. And first few months, people were doing online this, and he would live stream, and for him, it was very therapeutic, like just kind of expressing his feelings at the piano, and people were very responsive to that and very affirming and very loving. But he has said for months now, he talks to most of his musician friends, and they're like, I don't have the energy. I don't have the motivation.
Yeah.
But, they're not, those types of art forms are designed for an audience and for people to respond to. And if that is either virtual or just removed at all, it's, People have asked since the beginning of this, do we think that people are going to want to go work in offices again? Do we think that people are going to gather for live events? And my take on it, everyone's going to is already craving those real in-life experiences. And I don't know, exactly when we're going to reach herd immunity in this country versus other countries or state, compared to other states. But I believe that in most cultures that I'm aware of, once it becomes an option, people are going to be like, hell yes, I'm going to go do this in person
Yeah,
thing.
I think so too. I don't think that we're going to be like, well, I mean, at least on a personal level, I don't feel that way.
I wonder if you experience this, because you and I know lots of people in the arts. I would say, again, kind of that phase two, I was getting invited to so many, this virtual concert, that virtual recital, this online performance, this Zoom sketch comedy. And I want to support my friends. And I love that I'm being invited. But there are times where I'm like, I don't want to sit and look at a screen anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I feel the same way too. I will say this, that in general in life, I have very little issue with saying no to things I don't want to do.
Good.
Yeah, which is like part of that is like try to, I guess, come in a little full circle here is like I have a knee-jerk reaction to no. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to like I have like talked about how I value my free time so much, and like have been like kind of protective of like how much time I spend with other people. So I have to kind of compensate for that. But man, do I have no problem saying no to things. I just grown up just being like, nah, I don't want to do that.
Someone once told me that, I mean, and you and I too, like part of our training is saying yes, right? And that's not just an idea on stage, but a thing in life. But someone once, I read this somewhere, like, yeah, sometimes saying no means you're saying yes to all the other options because you're freeing yourself up.
That's a good way to put it for sure. Yeah, it's good to talk to you because I feel like you've got such a great self-awareness about like when I've talked to you and Paul about like how you're handling things and like how you're thinking about things. It's just so funny because like I almost don't remember like we're in a pandemic because it's become so second nature.
Yeah.
And then I'm almost like confused about why I feel weird or my brain feels different. And like I feel like you and Paul have been very like active at trying to like stay connected with people, like find the spice of life still, and like be aware of what's going on inside yourselves. Because for me, it just all of a sudden will be like I won't think about it for a couple weeks, and it'll sneak up, and I'll be like, oh, that's why I feel this way.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you mentioned, and thank you. I take that as a compliment. And you mentioned this before. I feel, Paul and I feel really proud of the way he and I are handling life. Honestly, handling our relationship. I mean, again, I read a lot of articles about sort of the sociology of things that are going on. And Paul and I see a couples counselor, and we've continued to see him on Zoom about once a week. And I have a therapist who I see as well. And what I've heard from people in that community is, first of all, therapists, couples therapists, counselors, like they're all super booked up because everyone's stressed the fuck out dealing with, anxiety is up and depression is up and all this stuff. And I've seen article after article that couples, whether you're married or living together or kids or not, like it's stressful on the relationship.
Or if you're in like a small van together on the road.
Yes.
You're living in this little cell, and every time you have to poop, you have to find a place to go.
Oh my God. Well, at least, thankfully, you can get outside, right, where you are.
Yes,
Jonny, seriously, I bet you and I both know people in New York City whose apartments are about the size of your van.
Yeah, for sure.
And they don't walk outside to a beach and a boardwalk, right?
I know.
Paul and I don't remember when we became aware of this. Let's say it was 3 months in. We can remember the date, March 13th was the day that we sort of locked down our house. And I'm going to say April, May. It was probably mid-June when I realized not only had he and I never spent that much time living in the same house together, I travel quite a bit for a living, and Paul does too. We had never lived in the same state for 3 months in a row in the history of our relationship.
Oh, damn. That's wild.
Right? We have neighbors. They're just across the tracks there. He travels a lot. He works in live events as well, but he's on the sort of tech side of things. He travels a lot more. And I don't know, he and his wife have been together for 4 or 5 years, and she was like, I'm used to having these breaks where he would just be gone, you know. But for me and Paul, I have to say, Paul keeps joking. He's like, oh, yeah, we could handle a trip to Mars together if we had to. We've done really well. You know, like in real life, sometimes there's tension, sometimes there's conflict. I would say early on it was a little more intense because everything felt, for all of us, really scary and really depressing and really cut off.
And it hasn't felt more difficult through a Chicago winter for you guys than...
You know what? I have to say, going into it, I was like, it's going to be winter plus COVID. It's going to be cold plus quarantine. It's going to be all these things. It's been easier than I thought. Well, you know, the porch that you guys, where we had dinner...
Beautiful porch. We
live in the city. The fact that we have access to outside space is an absolute gift and privilege. Yeah. And we used the shit out of it. Dinners and, you know. And a couple times this winter, before it got really bad a few weeks ago, if the temperature got to a certain range, we would set up a small fire pit, text a few friends. Everyone would, you know, spread out. It was BYO everything. If you're going to drink, if you're going to eat, you know, bring a blanket. We're going to... so we've been trying to find ways to stay connected. But in some ways, it has not been as hard. And I think for me, it's because partially in winter, you kind of adjust your expectations anyway.
Yeah, like, that's true. We're used to that.
More. We're not going to, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it would be nice to go to the gym or go to, you know, the Russian sauna and sit in the steam, or a movie or someone else's house or whatever. We have, I have to tell you, I think for us, it's, you know, the last month has been Chicago's toughest, you know, winter time frame so far. We have been taking our nephew sledding, sometimes 3 and 4 times a week.
Yes.
At one of the Park District hills up in Rogers Park. We take him for him, but it's just as good for us. It's exercise. You're, you know, trekking up the steps, and then the screaming and, you know, wiping out is fun. So being outside has helped.
Yeah.
The other thing, well, and also when it would get really crappy, we were like, all right, we got good food in the fridge. We'll make a nice pot of something and, you know, kind of higa and watch a movie. But I will tell you, I think the thing that he and I think we would both attribute to sort of our mental saving grace this winter, and maybe I've talked to you about this, but before we got into the winter, we told each other we're going to find reasons to get out after dark, even if it's to go for a drive, because you know what it's like, right?
Yeah.
It's dark at 4:30. It's cold. You're like, forget it.
It feels like the day's done.
It feels like the day's done.
Yep.
We have been some weeks, maybe every other day. Like for a while, you know, I was sewing. I was making masks, right? Mm-hmm. And we would just drive to friends' house and like give them masks and have these like 5-minute conversations, you know, masked, you know, outside on their porch or the front door or whatever. And then for a while, he's a Georgia boy, and he found a place in the city that he could get raw peanuts, and he was making boiled peanuts. We called them boiled peanuts, and a friend of ours was like, "Are you talking about a bald penis?" No, it's a boiled peanut.
Yes, we are, but also boiled peanuts.
Yes, but he would come home with 10 pounds of peanuts, and there's this whole ritual of the cooking and the water and the salt, and then he would put them in bags, and we would go to my cousins and friends and neighbors. Those little connection points have been a big part of our sanity. When it's funny because then the peanuts went out of season, so we started making shrimp salad. You know, like
people shrimp salad.
Yeah, we're like weeks.
You guys are the coolest.
And you know, you've seen how I make like
wreaths
and wreaths and stuff.
Yeah, you're super.
I made almost 100 this winter because I needed shit to do and it kept my hands busy. But then sometimes I would ship them to people out of state. But I would oftentimes be like, okay, this is going to Brian and Elizabeth. I'm going to take one to Lori and Nadine in Evanston, and then we're going to go see Mike's family in Rogers Park. So we'd get in the car and we deliver, you know, and it was less about the wreath or the gift. It was more about 5 minutes of human interaction.
Yeah.
And Paul made this point the other day. In a normal winter, we wouldn't do 5-minute visits. You either get together and hang out, or you're just hanging out at home.
Oh, right.
So in some ways, we've maybe pushed ourselves to be a little bit more social by having these little tiny connections. And I hope, I believe that 6 months from now and whenever we're all a little more able to connect, that there are several friendships that will be more intact because of that, or friends that we might have just lost touch with if we didn't if we didn't create those reasons to connect.
And sometimes 5 minutes is all you need with somebody.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe you don't want more than 5.
Yeah,
My-
5 minutes is plenty.
I have a friend, Peter, who lives next to me. We always see each other going to Trader Joe's, and like him and his wife used to be out walking their dog when they had a dog. But my husband like bumped into him, and like Peter's just the nicest guy. And my husband came back once, and he's like, you know what? He's like, Peter is the perfect stop and chat person. He knows how to like give you a very authentic hello, hey, how's it going, and then walk away. And Peter's someone that I can hang out with all day, but like sometimes that's an art form for people to like stop and chat and then walk away. Oh my God, Andrew. So Matt was out playing cello. He's busking, in Sarasota. And there's another family that's like...
Can we just say that busking in Sarasota sounds like a great title for a movie?
Yeah, for sure.
Or a show or a book or something.
I'll have to write it. There's like a kid out there, maybe like 13, 14, who's also got a cello.
Oh.
And Matt stops and just like says hi to them, and like he's with his parents. I guess he's leaving, and I'm like driving up to pick him up in the van.
Oh no!
And then no, not like creepy. The mom comes over, and like our doors open, and like Matt's like ready to get in, and like, dude, I have never seen someone not know how to stop talking so hard in my entire life. We sat there we were trapped there for 55 minutes. Like giving her all the cues that we're packing up, and we're like, well, that's great. And like she's like standing at the door of the car, and and every time we were like, okay, bye, it was as if she was scared to say goodbye, and then was like just started talking about something more. I got in the car, we drove off. I was so angry, I was fuming. We parked, I was like, Matt, I have to go for a walk. I can't handle this. This lady just couldn't stop talking. It was the worst.
I wonder if that's more intensified for her, like it might be for a lot of us, because we're so socially starved right now.
Maybe. I think she did this to everyone she saw on the street.
It's just Thursdays with her. Yeah.
It was rough. Anyways, dude, it was great getting to talk with you. Thank you for being so generous with your time.
It's good.
I'm excited to be back in Chicago and get my garden going and have you come over. And
oh my God, I totally we already figured there were a few things that we saw about the way that you were raising your tomatoes that we're going to use this year. Can I tell you one more story?
Yeah.
And this is, I think, like, again, I think part of what you've been getting at with some of your questions is like some positive outcomes or like solutions for living in COVID.
Yep.
So, I mentioned that our block is normally really busy with pedestrians, but this year, especially in summer, because the train comes by and like 3 people get off of the train, right? Instead of like 300 people or whatever. But there is that daycare at the end of the block. And in summer, a lot of the parents come by with the strollers to pick up their kid or their kids and whatever. So this summer, we weren't working much. We were outside all the time. And, remember how we built we had the corn growing on that pedestrian area?
The 3 ladies, is it?
It was the 3 sisters.
The 3 sisters, yes. Corn,
beans, and squash.
Yeah, they can all grow together.
Literally, there were probably 50 people, maybe 100 over the course of those few months, who would stop and want to comment, ask about the corn, talk about that. We would never have had those conversations if we were just busy doing life and not on the porch and whatever. And the preschoolers, the little ones, for them, that's like they would walk by it every day, and I would tell them like,
corn grows fast.
It does. Like this, one of these days, this corn's going to be taller than you guys, and then they come by a week later, and it's up to here. There are at least, I can think of 1 family and maybe 2 who I consider friends. They've come over and had brunch on the porch. This one couple,
from seeing your corn.
That's where the conversation started. Their toddler.
Cool.
Remember, I used to have the Easter eggs on the gate.
Yes. You took those off?
I kept them up into the fall.
Oh, I know. That's why I said that.
And then I because our plan was we're going to keep them up until we can celebrate Easter, which may be next year. And then I made fall-colored eggs because there were so many little kids that would come by and stop and look at the eggs and talk about them. I was like, I can't take those away from them.
Aww.
But this one little boy, his name is Eli. He was 2. He's now 2.5. Every day he would sit on his dad's shoulders and he had to count the eggs. So we just started chatting with them. Well, fast forward 6 months later, they've come over and hung out. They've had a second child since then. She's now 6 months old, so we must have known them for about 9 months old. The mom, the wife in the situation, recently had surgery. We took some food, but we would not have had these friends. There are more neighbors that I know socially, and people who live. The building where I work also has apartments in it,
Yeah.
And everyone kind of sort of keeps to themselves, but conversations about the corn, conversations about the eggs. I mean, there are ways where I think at the beginning of our conversation, you were talking about that sense of community in a village, and to me, there's that experience of isolation and being cut off from people and missing people, but somehow at the same time, a sense of slightly heightened community. You were talking about our neighborhood, Christmas, New Year's Eve, what are you going to do for New Year's Eve and COVID and a quarantine? Our neighbors across the alley put out their fire pit, invited 8 people. We all spread out, threw some things on the fire, listened to music. I would love to spend every New Year's around a fire pit with people. It was super fun.
That's really cool.
Mask and distance, which is all still a little bit weird, but there are elements of the slowing down and of the being closer to home that have created opportunities for engagement that either they weren't there before or I just wasn't paying attention because I was too busy doing all of my important things.
Yeah. Dude, you're the best. I definitely can't wait to see you guys in Chicago.
Oh my God.
Have you guys over for a bonfire in our small backyard where it smells like dead rats?
Yeah, totally. We've been looking forward to the dead rat smell forever. Do we know when you're coming back, or that's?
Oh, I don't know. I think we want to come back when it's warm. So maybe we'll be back in May. Maybe June. Yeah, it's Chicago. All right, brother. I love you. Thanks so much for doing this.
We love you. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Tell Paul I said hi too.
I will. Give my best to Matt.
Will do.
See you, man.
All right, toodles.
Dance, appetite. Dance to the middle of the night. Come on, dance. Wake up the appetite.